infinite souls out there, America is the land of the promise, but it is also the land of the wounded. Up to 37% of children in America are being reported to Child Protective Services or CPS prior to the age they turn 18. Now, 56% of Black children are being reported prior to the age of they turn 18 in America. 1 out of 5 girls will be sexually abused before they turn 18. 1 out of 6 boys will be sexually abused. Now, but we're wondering if that numbers is due to the fact that boys don't cry, right? So there is a generation of wounded adults walking around. We know in the clinical world, whatever age the person was being abused and hurt, they became developmentally arrested. So what that means is that if you were hurt at the age of 5 years old, you can be a 40 years old person and you are still walking around as a 5 years old. Emotionally, you are terrified, you behave like a child, like a victim, as a helpless 5 years old, okay? So today we're gonna talk about healing the inner child again, another series, and more often than not, people think that child trauma have to do with abuse or hurt. Well, it doesn't have to. It can be a disruption in bonding, such as parental divorce, such as the death of a parent, the death of a pet, of a best friend. Okay, so children are very, very vulnerable and sensitive. We have a lot of wounded adults when they were bullied as children, and they're scarred for life as well. As you progress through stages of evolution in your development, okay, if you notice, there's a child that's running inside of you. There's a child behind the steering wheel, and this child is basically carefree, knows no consequences, is pretty much immoral, care nothing about consequences. The child lives basically on the hedonistic principles, okay? An example would be overeating, drinking, abuse, sexual promiscuity, abandoning behavior, not taking care of yourself, okay? So when the child grows up, the child gonna develop a victim as a playmate to the child. So the victim is basically a very angry entity inside of you that you tend to see the world is out to victimize you. Everything bad always happened to me. Everybody is out to get me. My parents, the government, my friends, the Facebook, everybody. Okay, so this victimized mentality is a duet with the child. They play well together, and then after some time, both of them created a patient identity. So as a child and the victim would play in the backstage of your consciousness, they develop a patient identity. The patient is depression, anxiety, fear, worry, addiction, because the patient is now very much a byproduct of what the child and the victim put out in life, okay? So usually what I see is a client come in, he or she has been hurt when they were 3, 4, 5 years old, okay? So they were locked in at that age. And then they develop a victim mentality. By the time they're adolescent, they develop full-blown depression, okay? So these 3 triads, they kind of work together and hijack your brain, hijack your joy, your love, your peaceful life, and then they hire something that's called the ego, okay? So the ego was created as a managing conservator of these 3 entities. A good example of the ego is, do you remember how it is for toddler? At age 2 or 3, they start exerting themselves in the world. They start saying, this is me, my, and myself. That's the stage of toddlerhood, okay? Now, it's even more dangerous when that toddler became an adult. So, as the managing conservator, the ego is out to protect the child, the victim, and the patient. The interdynamic entity runs your life, okay, and is destroy relationship, career, family, okay. An example would be a young man who is a professional young man, very intelligent, highly valued by his company. Well, one day he found out he didn't receive the promotion, but his teammate did. So they decided to give it to his teammate, which he thought that he deserved. So what he did, he went in and destroyed his cubicle. He turned everything upside down, flipped the computer, and left. So he was charged for vandalizing the company. Okay, so this is an example of the child is enraged, and the victim is show down his anger, and then later on he became depressed because he lose his job. So the patient come into the picture for that reason. By this trilogy of the cell, we identify the child, the victim, the patient inside of the client, and then we doing a process which is called the deconstruction of the ego. Okay, so how do you deconstruct an ego that has been operating in your life for years? Now, you may not be aware that you have an ego, okay? But if you tend to be defensive, you tend to be judgmental, you tend to be righteous in everything, argumentative with other people, you have to be right at all times, you have an ego, okay? So the term egoistic to egomania or even ego fragile. If you have a fragile ego, which is mean that you can immediately become sensitive and cry when somebody says something benign about your hair or the way how you look, okay? So this ego is the governing entity of the child, the victim, and the patient. So how do you deconstruct the ego? First of all, by recognizing all of these entities, they are basically your way as a child to cope with the world. So it's not to condemn them, but to understand they're basically defense mechanism that you did the best you could as a child to deal with a hedonist world, okay? So how do you deconstruct the ego? You have to bring out the competent adult in you. So let's imagine you own a multi-million-dollar company. You have 3 corrupted employees. Okay, one wants to be a child all the time. They don't want to show up for work. They say they're tired. They can't do it. They just want to stay home and play game. Now the other one is the victim. The victim say, oh, I can't do this. This is too hard. Okay, why it's not fair for me to do all of this work? So the victim call in sick. Okay, and then you have a patient that constantly burned out. The patient call in and say, I'm depressed today, I'm anxious, I don't want to work. So what do you do if you own a company like such? You have to hire a powerful CEO, right? You have to hire someone who takes charge, who provide the preeminent leadership in your company. Well, guess what? The person in the mirror is the person that show up for the interview. There is a job that only you can do. So you have to become that competent adult, okay, with the adult taking the leadership. Whenever the child voice come on, you hold the child. You love the child. You don't discredit, you don't dismiss, you don't displace the child. Okay? So you would pick the child up and hug and give the child love and attention the way a mother pick up a crying child. Because if you ignore a crying child, he get worse, right? Okay, so when the victim voice come on and be rageous and angry and brutal, then you want to provide the rational voice to calm the patient down, okay? And when the patient come in on board, the patient say, well, I'm helpless, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I can't do it. Then you provide the relaxation, stress reduction, you do whatever it takes to help to honor these different aspects about yourself, okay? In the process of meditation, I want to share with you a story about a prince in India who sought high and low in the land of India for 6 years. And finally, he was so frustrated, he couldn't find the answer to internal peace and happiness. So he sat under the Bodhi tree for 49 days. And on the 49th days, he attained enlightenment, okay? His very first famous sentence is, I see you, the builders of my house. From now on, you will not leave me on birth and death cycle again. This is my last life on earth. Being human, I will not be reincarnated again. Guess who the builders thought? Okay. The builders in Buddhist psychology, the root cause of suffering is greed, anger, and delusion. Okay. Greed simplifies the child. The child has a bottomless greed. It's always about craving. I want. I want food, I want drink, I want love, I want sex, I want clothes. Child cares nothing about consequences, okay? And who is anger? The victim. Is anything that touching you, you're going to be enraged. Anybody that violates your rights, you're going to be enraged. Okay, so that's the root cause of suffering. Okay, and then the third root cause of suffering is delusion. Delusion means the patient. The patient deludedly into thinking and identifying himself with his emotion. While depression is a stage of life, it can be a mental state of the mind created by environmental circumstances. You weren't born with it. Anxiety is the same way. I usually tell my clients, emotions are our best friend. They are signposts on our journey. They tell us how we need to live, what we need to do differently in life. So for example, if you have depression, it means that you are not filling up your life. You are not doing enough. You are not living your mission, okay? And so it's making noises, which you yell and scream at the vehicle. All you have to do is just pull over and see what's wrong with the vehicle, okay? So if we are the infinite mind as a sea, then emotions are basically like the waves in the sea. They come and they go. They're like clouds in the blue sky. They come and they go. And they're there for a reason. We need to honor, we need to look at the root cause of it, but we need not to react to it. Okay? So mindfulness, living or living your life from the observer mind, being able to identify all of these interplayers in the backstage of consciousness will help you to progress in your evolution. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, all of the infinite beings out there. If you'd like to hear more about it, stay tuned to subsequent session. We're going to
be notified when a new video is uploaded. You can also reach out to Dr. Vo directly through her website. The link is in the description below.